Oh, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. I hope you guys are doing well today. I know my day's going great. Before we move into this segment, if you would please join me in a moment of silence, and I'll ring us in and get us grounded down to those energies that will allow us to give our undivided attention to something that perhaps you need to hear, something that perhaps you've been searching for an answer, and maybe today's episode will move you in that right path, right? And maybe tear some walls down that need to be torn down, and or maybe just give you a little wisdom that you've been lacking, right? So before any further ado, let's ring us in and let's get our energies right. All right, here we go. Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo. Eternal Buddha Shakyamuni, please guide us. Energies of the world out there, please guide us. Let's all guide each other. Let's be open to that energy, be mindful, compassionate to the energy, that it'll allow us to ground us down, to be vulnerable during the session. It's the only way that we can absorb the energy, is to be vulnerable. All right. Thank you. Okay, now that we're grounded down, now that we we got a lifeline, right? That we got something that we can be at ease with, to learn something, right? To hear something that is of that's of importance, I guess, in our life, right? Because there's things that you need to hear and things that you don't, and that's the whole purpose of being mindful about things and opening up that introspective awareness of that awareness, right? Of that being mindful, right? Because you can be mindful of things that are good and things that are bad, and you want to keep the ones that you need and be aware of the ones that you don't, and discard those things, right? So anyway, let me up these glasses real quick. Let me take a sip of this Java juice, right? This as some people out in the Hispanic community, or the anyway, the streets that I grew up in, anyway, little taste of this chanate, right? But anyway, here we go. Okay, so what we're going to do today is today we step into the heart of what we've been discussing in the past few weeks, and dig into that which is the six perfections, or the paramitas, right? And we've been discussing those, and we discussed in the previous weeks. We discussed generosity and ethical discipline, and two very important parts of where to start, right? And where to start in a world, in a new journey in your life, whatever that's going to be. You know what I mean? If you're going to start a new chapter in your life and decide if it's a good idea, or if you're having doubts or whatever, generosity and ethical discipline is always a good start. You know what I mean? And now, today, we dig into the heart of that, which is the third and the fourth paramitas, which is patience and energy. And it's and sometimes energy is referred to as the enthusiastic effort, right? And so just to kind of get your mind moving in the direction where we're going with this discussion today is, have you ever felt that your temper flared in seconds, and when things don't go your way, or if you've ever stared at a huge task or just stayed thinking about a goal and feeling totally drained even before you start, because you're just like, wow, this task or this goal that I'm trying to attain, it's how am I going to do it? You know what I mean? And you stay stuck in when your mental thought process is that way. And it is a and just so you know, you're not alone in that. You know what I mean? You're not alone in that. And today we will look at how patience, or in Sanskrit, kasanti, helps us stay cool in the fire, and how joyful energy, or virya, meaning energy, gives us that push or the energy to keep going with a happy and motivative heart and mind, right? So, patience is get to my page where we're going to discuss this stuff here in just a second. Okay, yeah. So, in the commentary by Geshe Sonam Rinchen, in the book The Six Perfections, the one that I've been discussing, the six perfections, using that particular book, because I think it's really insightful, and it really brings to light the teachings of the six perfections, right? The six paramitas. Now, the essence of the Buddha's teaching is to avoid doing harm and to give help, both in which are impossible without practicing patience. Now, if you are tempted to retaliate as soon as others injure you, you still have the impulse to harm. You feel like harming others, you cannot help them. If you feel like harming others, you cannot help them, right? Now, what is true patience and how we can develop it, and or what you might ask, what is true patience and how you can develop that? And patience is in perturbability, and in the face of harm and hardship. Now, responding to these difficulties with anger is extremely destructive, because it creates unpleasant consequences and destroys positive energy, right? Now, there is no austere patience to equal the practice of patience, which calms the turbulence of the disturbed emotions. And that's really where patience is what patience is working on, is calming the disturbed emotions. Because if you're impatient, then that means you have disturbed emotion. And how funny is it that, or how I guess, I don't know what the word would be, but maybe, how unfortunate, I guess, maybe, that such little turbulence of actions or whatever comes your way, it could be so finite that it disturbs your emotions, and you're impatient. You know what I'm saying? It is cultivated in meditation and implemented in everyday life. There are three main kinds of patience: the patience of taking no account of those who inflict harm, the patience of willingly accepting adversity, and the patience of gaining certainty with regard to the teaching. Now, and the teaching could be anything. It doesn't have to just be Buddhism. It could be the teaching of whatever it is that you're involved in your life, to help you with the patience, to help you with the suffering of your life. And that could be anything from Buddhism to being a Christian to being a Catholic or whatever, right? Even involving even the things that you're doing in a 12-step program, if you're involved in any of that, or any of the mental health programs, you know what I mean? All of that, it's covering the broad spectrum of things that you can put in that blank space, right? Now, the opposites are animosity, discouragement, and reluctance to engage with the teachings. Now let's go over that one more time. The three main kinds of patience is the patience of taking no account of those who inflict harm, the patience of willingly accepting adversity, and the patience of gaining certainty with regard to the teaching. And the opposite of those three are the animosity, discouragement, and the reluctant to engage with the teaching. Now, it is, at first, the steps toward developing patience, think about its benefits and the drawbacks of anger, which has both visible and invisible consequences, right? And the unseen effects of anger are that it destroys virtue accumulated over time. And anger directed at a bodhisattva is particularly destructive. And since there is no ease, or since there's no easy way of telling who is and who isn't a bodhisattva, it is prudent not to get angry with any living being. You know what I mean? And what that's saying is, a bodhisattva is someone who is living their life according to the Buddhist teachings to alleviate all sentient beings' sufferings, including their own, right? And not attaining nirvana, holding their nirvana off to the path of enlightenment for the sake of everybody else. You know what I'm saying? They want to save everybody else's suffering and take the grunt of that suffering away from you, so that you can lead a better life and enter nirvana, right? Enter enlightenment and that sort of thing. And that goes to say that if you harm or have bad, non-virtuous things towards somebody like that, and not have the patience to deal with them, you don't know who these people are, right? It's just like seeing, in the Christian community, you don't know that your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ comes in many different forms. So therefore, act as if everybody is that, right? Because you don't know. And it's the same concept. Here's what it's talking about. You know what I mean? And how impatient are we with those situations? You know what I mean? You deal with it at the convenience store, right? somebody comes and asks you for change, or somebody's at the red light with the little sign holding it up, you don't know, and you immediately got this reaction towards them, right? And instead of having a response toward them, so patience must be cultivated constantly. You know what I mean? And this is the only way to be prepared when provocative circumstances arises. You know what I mean? And that's true. You know, if you don't constantly do patience, if you're not constantly being aware and sharpening that part of your mental process up, then it's hard. It's hard to move forward in a lot of endeavors that you're in a lot of the things that you're doing. You get stuck, man. And so try to prevent anger altogether. And but if it does arise, take steps to ensure that it is short-lived and does not turn into resentment. You may be fully aware of anger's many disadvantages, but if you do not make a conscious effort to develop patience, you still turn into a ball of rage every time you are provoked. Now, not expressing anger is no indication of patience, which is not the suppression of anger, but the ability to remain calm and to get upset. And not to get upset, I'm sorry. And anger robs us of our peace of mind, leaving no room for joy or happiness. Even the softest bed will not induce sleep when anger smolders. You know, it makes us behave vindictively even to those who have been the kindest to us. You know, through our irritability, we lose friends and alienate people to such an extent that they will avoid us. Though we may try to be generous, Kandarkirtris, supplement of the middle way, says, it makes us ugly, leads to the unholy, and robs us of discernment to know right from wrong. Impatience quickly casts us into bad rebirths. Now, you know, that anger, smoldering of the anger is really something that I believe is one of the pitfalls that we have to really be aware of in our practice, in our daily life. And because when you have anger that you suppress, and a lot of people, especially people in addiction and people who deal with mental health, they suppress the anger to move forward in their day. And it's almost like this tool that they have to do this so that they can get through their day. You know what I'm saying? It's like putting the happy face on. You don't want to, but you got to put that little happy face on to get past your day and give the fake smiles and the fake hellos. You know what I'm saying? And as soon as you get home, this is off and you're back into the dungeon. You know what I mean? When you're smoldering that type of mental thought process, your patience is diminishing. Because we all know what happens when you have a smoldering effect. When that heat is smoldering somewhere, and as soon as you blow a little bit of wind to it, it flares up. And all it takes is just one little gust. And you're back. And that's the thing, that just the minute thing that can enter into your mental thought process will just bring to life that smoldering organism that had been dormant. You know what I'm saying? And next thing you know, you got this full-blown anger or whatever. It's just like that virus that stays dormant in your body. And as soon as something mixes in there with it, I mean, we all seen this during COVID, right? That as soon as this thing hit, it mixed in with the organisms in your body. All of a sudden, your breath is gone. You cannot breathe. It's taking that breath away. It's taking that life away, and it sucks it away from you. That's what the smoldering does in your life. And eventually, just like the COVID, it brings death. You know what I mean? It ties you down. And it's hard to get up, and it's hard to function that way. You know what I mean? So you got to be really aware of that smolderingness when you're dealing with patients, because it is something that can come back to really, bite you in the long run, man. You know what I'm saying? So, and the only way I believe to really put out the smoldering of that thing that ignites the impatience is through consistent practice. You know what I mean? The consistent practice of patience, and it's a variety of things that come along with that, right? And when the fire of anger burns, we grow ugly, hot, and bothered, and red in the face. Soon frowns, wrinkles, and beads of sweat appear. Anger upsets us and others. We become incapable of distinguishing between right and wrong, and as a result, we often make serious mistakes because our mind is not clear. And that's what impatience does. It clouds your mind up. And when your mind is clouded with other things, you're not able to react. Or what I mean is, you're able to only react to the situation instead of responding to the situation. Because when you respond, you're activating that part of the mental thought process that is going to bring you the right view of things and react accordingly, right? Now, on the other hand, patience gives rise to joy, happiness, and well-being now. Its practice close the door to bad future rebirths, creates the cause for a strong body and mind, and eventually leads to liberation or moksha, as in the Sanskrit term meaning liberation. Now, and that's very true. You know what I'm saying? I believe that because I've experienced that in my own personal journey. You know what I mean? That practicing being mindful and compassionate, it gives rise to the patience. You know what I mean? And it's really great stuff. You know what I mean? Now, though, and through that type of thinking and actions, you develop the meditative stabilization of compassion and love, right? Now, serenity and joy make us all attractive and radiant in a way that outshines conventional beauty. Gods and humans will love us and surround us with their friendship. Happiness is not fortuitous, but the result of virtue, and nothing protects virtue better than the practice of patience. And I love that it gives you this visual of how you will look when you have patience. And to me, I believe that's a very true statement, because I've recognized this in my own personal journey through the feedback of other people. You know what I mean? That the people that the sangha that I'm involved in my Buddhist practice, and when I go here or there, people react to you and give you this feedback that, hey, you know, your aura, or your this or your that, and it's due to that. It's due to the practice of patience and many other things that come into spiritual practice, but it works, and you do get this. It's like getting a facelift, almost. You know what I'm saying? Because I can remember when I was in deep in the addiction, no one ever came to me about anything like that. You know what I mean? People only came to me because they needed some more of this or some more of that, and you know, it was, and patience was not very. It was really, there was not a lot of patience living a life like that. You know what I mean? You're always on the defense to, you know, protect yourself and to do harm to others. You know what I mean? Even with the actions that you were doing. But anyway, that's another story for another day, right? Now, you know, in the practice of ethical discipline, one tries to avoid faulty actions, and that's kind of one of the things that you do when you're impatient. It makes you do those types of things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these 6 paramitas coexist with each other. They're interdependent on one another, that you don't have this unless you have that. You don't have generosity unless you have ethical discipline. You don't have ethical discipline unless you have patience. And you won't have patience unless you have the energy, the enthusiastic energy to motivate yourself to move forward in that way, right? Now, compassion is finding it unbearable to see others suffer or create causes for suffering. Those others are not only humans, and the suffering concerned covers all levels, even the most subtle. Through words such as compassion used in different spiritual traditions are often the same, we must think whether their meaning and implications are in fact identical. Non-violence toward living beings entails not violating but cherishing even the water, earth, air, and forest, which form their habitat. You know, there is much that each of us can contribute toward this ideal. When we do something we know to be harmful, we may feel sincere regret or be quite ruthless about the harm we do. Our regret will help to prevent us from repeating the action. Genuine nonviolence, love, compassion, and the wish to help are noble human qualities which anyone can develop, no matter to which culture they belong, and no matter whether they are young or old. They are not able to They are not the exclusive prerogative of Buddhists, right? And only by identifying and stopping its causes can anger be overcome. The seeds of anger and other disturbing emotions continue to lie dormant and within us, until we have rid ourselves of them completely. You know what I mean? And that's what I was saying earlier. That stuff stays dormant. It smolders. And until you extinguish it completely through the practice of polishing up the 6 perfections, will you always be vulnerable to that. Now, when we encounter a stimulus and respond with an inappropriate and distorting mental approach, the disturbing emotions arise. Although we harbor seeds for the whole gamut of disturbing emotions, they do not all manifest with equal intensity. Some people are calm and peaceful, but quite confused, and find it hard to learn anything new. And other people are quick to learn, but easily irritated. Whatever our propensities may be, we are not condemned to remain as we are. Now keep trying to remember that even the smallest progress, that even the smallest progresses is better than nothing at all. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying is even just doing a little bit at a time, because you can't. What's that old saying? Is that you can't conquer Rome in one day, or build, or I don't know. I forgot the metaphor there, but you can't do that in one day. You know what I mean? It takes time, but the only way to do it is to bring about the action, bring about the yoga karma, which is the yoga of action, right? Now, and it's yeah, so I trying to see where we can go. There was another thing that I wanted to talk to you about that had to do with this, with the subject of patience in the so far we have examined the questions mainly in relation to the object. Now we consider the subjective aspects. If we can not bear a relatively minor form of suffering, such as the hurt someone inflicts on, or wish to retaliate, is totally inconsistent, because we thereby create the causes for much more intense suffering. It is foolish to behave in such an illogical way. And in his supplement to the Middle Way, Chanda Kirtris says that if you accept what is said about the ending of the effects of past non-virtuous actions, why attract the seed of suffering through harm and anger towards others? I'll say that one more time. If you accept what is said about the ending of the effects of past non-virtuous actions, why attract the seeds of suffering through harm and anger towards others? Now, a negative action we perform in the past resulted in a rebirth of a new type of action, right? Because that's what happens when in the text, when it talks about rebirths of actions, it's talking about things that you did previously come back, and it's that domino effect of cyclical existence, that if you do something negative, you do something bad, that's going to continue to happen until you stop doing non-virtuous things. You know what I mean? And the only way to break the chains, and I like to always use the world of addiction, because you're doing these non-virtuous actions and mental thoughts when you're in a life like that, and it could be anything, right? Even if you're in anger, or if you're depressed or anxiety or whatever. Those are the type of thoughts that are coming out of your mental thought process. And when you're doing those things and you allow those thoughts to dive into your subconscious mind, because that's your conscious mind, right? There's all these thoughts whirling away into your brain and freaking you out and giving you this anxiety and this impatience. And then when you allow those thoughts, because you're picking and choosing those thoughts, you know what I mean? You're actually picking and choosing those thoughts that are in your conscious mind and bringing them into your subconscious mind. In turn, there, you bring out this forth about this action. And if they're non-virtuous, and you're always thinking this sad stuff, or this depressed stuff, or this anger stuff, or this, whatever evil stuff, then those are the actions that you're going to do. You know what I mean? It's not really, it's very simple math in my eyes. You know what I'm saying? But because we live in this world of delusion that makes us think that it's okay, or that it'll get better, but it never does if you're not putting forth that energy, the right energies to make it better, right? Now, and human beings want happiness, right? And many factors contribute to this, but one important source of happiness is to have what we need, which is a result of practicing generosity. We also must have a strong mind and body to use and enjoy the fruits of our generosity. Now, ethical discipline of the body, speech, and mind leads to this. And through the generosity and ethical discipline, we guard it from anger's destructive power. Now, the Buddha's intention was to show living beings how to find happiness and how to form some kind of exclusive club, if you will. And all of us can use his precious advice, I believe. And in his summary of the stages of the path to enlightenment, Tongspa praises patience by saying, "Patience is the finest adornment of the powerful, the best ostricity to scourge the disturbing emotions. It is the Garuda, the snake of anger's enemy, and a hard shield against the weapons of harsh language. Knowing this, grow accustomed in every way to the stout armor of supreme patience." And that is saying that in order to have good generosity and good ethical discipline in your life, you need to armor yourself with beautiful and gracious patience. You know what I mean? And that is something that is, I think it's imperative, because you won't be able to do anything else if you don't have it. You know what I mean? It's an obstacle that you got to overcome, because impatience is detrimental to a lot of people's health, their life, their livelihood, their spiritual path, right? Now, the other paramita that we're going to discuss is the enthusiastic effort, and that is the it's the other part of patience, I believe. And it has because you have to have this attitude, you have to have this thing about you to move forward. Because if you don't, you stay stuck in that cyclical existence, right? Now, enlightenment is certainly possible for those prepared to put enthusiastic effort into the practice of bodhisattva deeds. And the two great stores of merit and insight necessary for enlightenment cannot be created without such enthusiastic effort. And in fact, every kind of well-being to which we aspire in this and future lives depends on joyful effort. If things could be achieved by laziness, its opposite, we would have achieved our aims long ago, right? And yeah, so it's a hard thing to do. You know what I mean? Because I can guarantee you this: if you look at your life, suffering has a whole lot more of your time than the joyful. You can only pick and choose the joyous times in your life. But man, can you see the suffering is a daily thing. You know what I mean? Now, enthusiastic effort is a delight in virtue. It is not an enthusiasm for unwholesome activities to which we often devote much effort, nor it is merely dutiful exertion to create virtue despite the innate reluctance. You know, when true delight and enthusiasm are present, stress and weariness do not occur. Man, isn't that so true? You know what I mean? It's like last week I'm at Six Flags with my grandson, and we're having this blast, right? And we're going through these roller coasters, and all the meanwhile, we're suffering from this extreme heat, and our bodies are getting tortured through this roller coaster that's twisting and turning your body and putting pain to it, suffering. But all the meanwhile, we're joyful because we feel that this is an exciting thing, right? And so it made me think of that when I just said that. So yeah, it's crazy, but it's true. Now, there are three main types of enthusiastic effort. It's armor like enthusiastic effort. It's enthusiastic effort in the creation of virtue and enthusiastic effort in working for others. Now, armor like enthusiastic effort consists of being prepared to do as much, go as deeply, and continue for as long as is necessary to achieve a positive objective. And that is a hard thing to do, to gear yourself up with that armor. And but it's one of those things that you can add, you know. And I like to always call the thing that I use in my personal life is my recovery arsenal. And it's one of those things that I have in my recovery arsenal is that patience. I arm myself with that because it gets you through the next part of your life, to the next thing in your life, because you in that type of life you're living moment to moment to moment. You know what I'm saying? Now, with it we let me see. Yeah, now with it, be prepared to spend a lifetime in rebirth if you're doing things that are not of that virtuous way of effort. Because you will continue to have the rebirth of that action, right? Now, to be prepared to spend a lifetime in a hell of rebirth, to put up with every difficulty to help a single being. Now, and lacking it, we are impatient and want to attain our objective in a short time and with as little effort as possible. Such an attitude is an obstacle to the Bodhisattva way of life and an indication that it will take a long time to reach enlightenment. Armor-like enthusiastic effort speeds us on our way there. And I believe that to be true because if you don't have that armor with you, if you're not practicing that, you'll be in the world of recovery. You'll be susceptible to the relapse. You know what I mean? You'll be you'll be susceptible to the falling into the depressions, to the anxiety, to the anger, all of those things. You know what I mean? Enthusiastic effort is in creating virtue is a delight in the practice of the six perfections. Enthusiastic effort in working for living beings entails wholeheartedly devoting our physical energy and resources to helping them and joyfully engaging in the 11 ways of working for them, which already have been discussed. In his three principles aspects of the path, Tongspa says, child, when you have properly understood the important points of the three principal paths, seek seclusion and with strong enthusiasm quickly ensure the good of all future lives. That is it's going back to that armor. You know what I mean? When you're doing what we just talked about there, and you're helping somebody else in recovery, that's helping the addict who still suffers. You know what I'm saying? In the way of a bodhisattva, that's helping others alleviate their suffering, because that's why you're withholding yourself from going to nirvana, because who's going to help the person that is still blinded by that? And that's your vow, that's your dedication, you know what I'm saying? That's why the Christians would, I guess, be why the Lord and Savior died on the cross for you, to save your suffering, to save you from that suffering. But it doesn't happen just because of that. You have to put on the armor and do the work. You know what I mean? Same concept. Because you're getting to the same destination, right? Now, the three forms of laziness prevent us from doing what Tongspa recommends: procrastination, involvement in trivial activities, and discouragement. Which is, a laziness stops us achieving anything useful and is a fertile growing medium for all the disturbing emotions. It is easy to be both extremely busy and lazy at the same time. You know, what causes us to delay our practice of virtue? It may be an addiction, an idleness or to sleep. It may be attachment to pleasure. We delay because we do not fear bad states of rebirth and have no aversion to cyclical existence. Do any or all of these affect you? I don't know. I'm sure they do. I know they did me for a long time. And still do to this day. You know what I'm saying? Now, the time passes as you keep putting off what in your heart you know you must do. And we take pleasure in many kinds of trivial activities and eagerly engage in them. Almost everything we enjoy falls into this category. You know, the sense of achievement and fame from strenuous and dangerous activities such as mountaineering or selling the world single-handedly brings some short-lived happiness. But they are of no lasting benefit to oneself or others, and are said to be trivial, even bad, since from a different perspective they are a waste of our human potential. You know what I mean? And going back to what we just said earlier, that we delay that in the things that we do. You know what I mean? We procrastinate, we become lazy, and because we don't fear the bad states of rebirth and have no aversion to the cyclical existence. In other words, that delusion comes from the comfortability of being in the suffering. You'd rather sit in the dark room and stay depressed. You rather not go out of the house because you don't want to deal with people. You decide that you want to just drink one more, or you're just going to stay here and use some more. And that's the comfortability. People get comfortable in their little box that they lose the armor of patience, and it distorts the mind. You know what I mean? It distorts the mind, and what happens when you're doing that? You're just leading yourself to the ultimate death, in a sense, just a little faster than you should, I guess. And it is you may wonder whether, from a Buddhist point of view, every kind of artistic endeavor necessarily falls into this category. Consider these two examples. We'll just throw this out there just because it's here. A musician with a strong wish to bring joy and pleasure to others, not just humans, but even to animals, spends much time practicing and perfecting his or her art. And another person, a scholar of Buddhism, enthusiastically and assiduously does years of research on great texts with the intention of writing a book, becoming famous and making a lot of money, who is practicing true enthusiastic effort. Motivation determines the ultimate worth of any activity. The causes that gives rise to happiness are called true virtue. And those that give rise to unhappiness are non-virtuous. Happiness comes from the state of mind which are peaceful and disciplined. Once your mind is more peaceful, your physical and verbal activities will undergo a positive change. You will avoid harming others, stop feeling discontent, and create the causes for future well-being. Now, all the favorable conditions for bringing about these changes are present, and that's the beautiful thing when you involve yourself in that, because it starts fruitioning these things that are interdependent upon one another, to be patience, to have the energy to be happy and joyful, right? Now, you may resolve to make the best use of these circumstances while they last, overcome attachment to trivial activities, and develop a genuine interest in what the Buddha taught. But now the daunting task of implementing the many profound and extensive practices of the great vehicle lies ahead. You know what I mean? Now, a magnificent result, such as enlightenment, the complete elimination of all faults, and perfection of all good qualities, can only result from the creation of equally significant causes, right? Now, if one is unaware of what we must overcome and develop on the path, this prospect will not fill one with awe. Now, if one understands the immensity of this undertaking, complete enlightenment for the sake of all living beings, in order to relieve their suffering and bring them happiness, one may feel disheartened. We have a vow to rid ourselves of faults, overcome our limitations, and fully develop our human potential. This may seem overwhelming when we consider how hard it is to get rid of a single bad habit or to develop a new accomplishment. You know what I mean? And discouraged, we may think, how can I ever attain enlightenment if this is what is involved in it? But armored with the right kind of enthusiasm, we will gladly spend a whole lifetime just learning to appreciate fully the preciousness of our human rebirth. When we have endured all kinds of meaningless hardships in the past, surely it is worth enduring difficulties for this great purpose. The Buddha, whose words are trustworthy, said, all living beings from the smallest insect have the ability to become enlightened. This statement can be substantiated by reasoning and need not be accepted simply because it was made by the Buddha. The clear light nature of the mind endows every being with potential to be totally free from stains and to develop every kind of good quality. The disturbing emotions are temporary and can be got rid of through the application of antidotes. Now, by learning, reflecting, and integrating the teachings through meditation, we develop our capabilities. All beings are the same in this. So where does the difference lie? In whether we are able to make enthusiastic effort or not. Now, in the Sutra of Encouraging the Special Wish, the Buddha says that enthusiastic effort praised by all Buddhas is transcendent. It removes all suffering and darkness and is the basis for completely ending bad rebirths. So cultivate it continually. Those who make enthusiastic effort will have no difficulty accomplishing even worldly and supramundane art. What wise person with strong enthusiasm is discouraged? Those engaged in attaining enlightenment, seeing the drawbacks of lethargy and sleepiness, spend their time making enthusiastic effort. I have encouraged them in this. Now, there's a whole lot more to be said about these two subjects, but we don't have the time to go through them all on this episode. But I just gave you the gist, you know what I mean? Something to really ground yourself to, a really good stepping stone, I believe, to seek, right? And again, we have considered the benefits of enthusiastic effort and the disadvantages of laziness. What constitutes enthusiastic effort, its various forms, different manifestations of laziness, and how to combat them, and how to support and enhance enthusiastic effort. You know, mental and physical pliancy are the ultimate antidotes to laziness. And thinking about our impending death counteracts our tendencies to delay. Considering the preciousness of our life and the difficulty to find such a rare situation of freedom and fortune curtails our involvement in trivial activities, fully recognizing the conducive inner and outer circumstances we enjoy, and our freedom from obstacles helps us to overcome discouragement. You know, when you look at your situation, your personal situation, and you really contemplate in a meditative state your existence as a human being and how rare that gift is that you have. Because at any breath, it can end. All it takes, you're just one breath away from not existing here in this world that we live in. You know what I mean? When you think about it in those minute ways of thinking, because that's what you're doing in your meditative practices, you're contemplating those sorts of things. You're contemplating your reality. You're contemplating your thought process. You're contemplating what you learn. You're contemplating wisdom of others to see where it fits in your life so that you can discard the things that need be not there and keep the things that you can cultivate and flourish. You know what I mean? Now, in the summary of the stages of the path to enlightenment, Tong Spa encourages us to develop the ability to make enthusiastic effort by saying, armored with unremitting and steady effort, scriptural knowledge and insight grow like the waxing moon. All your activities become meaningful, and whatever you undertake will complete successfully. Knowing this, bodhisattvas exert themselves to make powerful, enthusiastic effort, which dispels all laziness. And that, my friends, is what is going to bring that enthusiastic effort in you, is when you practice the perfection of the 6 paramitas. Because they all work together. They're interdependent on one another. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to find out that when you start this practice, even if it's a little bit at a time, you'll find out that that seed starts growing into this this beautiful thing that really sheds the skin of the old you and brings about this new person and this new mental thought process that armors you with that patience to have good ethical discipline and generosity practices, right? So they all work together, man. And again, that's the third and fourth of the 6 perfections of the 6 paramitas, which is really there's a whole lot more to talk about in those subjects, but I'm going to leave that up to you. That's the seeking part, you know what I mean? This is a seed that you're given so that you can cultivate and flourish and learn a little bit more on your own, because that's the only way to do it, you know what I mean? Now, I just want to thank you guys for your time, for your generous time, for your gift, for the generosity that you're giving me here to listen to the beautiful words of not only these wise sages that I like to quote in some of the things that I say, and just the teachings that I've learned throughout my life, right? And to bring them to you so that perhaps something can spark in you and get you out of that cyclical world that you're living in, you know what I mean? And for me, that's what it took. Somebody's beautiful words brought me out of the world of addiction. And so just, if you would please at this time, hit that subscribe button, go like, go subscribe, and share the channel, man, because, this is the only way to grow and to help the addict who still suffers, to help those people who are looking for a spiritual path, perhaps, and to alleviate the suffering in your life, right, to live a different way. And again, when you hit that subscribe button, just know that you're helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSD, childhood traumatic experiences, trauma, drug addiction, alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, depression, anger and grief, those types of things, man, because, I've dealt with all those things in my life at one point in time in my life, and you know what? I know a way out, and my way out could be your way out. So until the next time on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.